Miss Nancy, welcome to the book club. Everybody on here is our Soap Hub team who bring you your favorite articles every week. Possibly least favorite if you don't like what the critic has to say on the weekend sometimes.
We bring them their favorite articles and the other ones.
Brilliant.
So I think it would be good if Michael, if you'd like to start the interview.
Thanks, Garen. And thanks everyone for coming tonight to our inaugural Soap Hub Book Club meeting. And I think we've chosen a terrific author. Alina, I love your book. Can you tell me, and I love the format of it in that it's an ebook, but when you're reading it on your tablet, as I am here, you swipe and there are so many hyperlinks. Tell me how the format for the book came about once you decided to do the book.
Well, it's interesting because Nancy, who is our guest here, she talked about being a fan of Another World. And I actually was working for Procter & Gamble Productions. I started working for them in 2001, and I was doing the websites for As the World Turns and Guiding Light. So the official websites for the show. I also did the tie-in books for As the World Turns. I did Oakdale Confidential. I did Jonathan's story for Guiding Light, and I did The Man from Oakdale. And then in 2009, Another World was digitized and put online on YouTube. P&G was putting up their back catalog of episodes. And
when did they start? With what era?
Yeah, right around the time Alicia Coppola came on. So, because you have some of her very early episodes, so it was a lot of that, a lot of the Lorna stuff, a lot of the Felicia finding out Lorna is her daughter stuff, right around there. That was a heavy chunk of it. Every time I'd be screening an episode, my husband would walk by and go, "Ooh, who is angry long-haired girl?" And I would catch him up on what angry long-haired girl was up to. And it's actually very funny. A couple of years later, I tweeted that to Alicia Coppola, and her response was, "Oh, he has no idea." But anyway, that was around that era.
That's the kind of tweet you pray for to get back from someone.
So what I pitched P&G on was the idea of doing a multimedia continuation of Another World. We did a website called Another World Today, which, by the way, is still up. People want to see it. And the idea was we pick up life in Bay City, about 10 years after the show went off the air. It went off in 1999, right? Yeah, it went off in 1999. So the idea is we would pick up and write what was happening in Bay City, but the flashbacks would be actual video clips from the Another World episodes that were on YouTube as a way to promote the clips on YouTube. And it was after we did that multimedia experiment that I had the idea of doing a book where I would sort of crowdsource fans' favorite moments, then go to the people who created those moments, whether it be actors or writers, directors or producers. And then on top of that, after I had the interview with them, well, you click a link and you can actually watch the scene that they're talking about. Because I'm a geek and I read all these books about film and I read all these books about TV, but you'll have a director talking about how they did a particular shot and why it was the way it was. And I want to see it right now. So and that's what gave me the idea. Why should you just read about this moment? You should be able to watch it.
This is fascinating. Couple of questions. Did you head write the Another World Today?
Yes, I did. I did with a couple of other people. Yeah.
Okay. And what I'm curious is why we haven't seen more books with this format. Because I would think it would work for film. If you did a book on like the 90th or whatever anniversary, 85th anniversary of Casablanca, and then every time you reference the way something was played or said, then you would just click on that, go to the scene, and then come back. I found when I was perusing the book, I had no problem going back and forth between the video and then back to the book. So, I mean, for me, it was just effortless. Let me ask you this. How much did you choose any memorable moments that there might not have been video for out there? And if so, did you keep it in, or did you have to go with the most memorable moment that there's video of? The realities
That is
of
a very, very good question that I will now have to make a confession to. Yes, there were a couple of moments where people picked them, but I could not find them. So I have two sections. One is the main section where I actually speak to the creators. All of those moments are ones I could find the clips for. But then I have an honorable mention at the end, which is just the fans talking about their favorite moments. And that section had clips that I couldn't necessarily find. So that's the reason for that. Although on my Santa Barbara clip, I did interview Lane Davies and he described the scene. But when I went looking for it, the only thing I could find was an episode that was actually dubbed into French. So if you watch it, you have the scene, it's dubbed into French with subtitles, but that was the best I could do. I really went looking for that one.
Well, it sounds like you served both masters. You got the moments in there, even if you didn't have the clips for it, to represent that these are the moments. And let's face it, soap fans are we have those scenes memorized, especially if we've waited for them for years to happen. We're not going to forget. There are some of us who may remember getting sick and staying home so we could see a moment. Rosie O'Donnell said on her talk show once that she got a thermometer out and put it up against the light bulb because Frank was proposing to Jillian on Ryan's Hope on a Monday. She didn't answer till Friday.
Well, they were lawyers. It was a lot of negotiation.
A lot of negotiation.
My mother was not a soap fan, but she knew I was. So she came to school and picked me up early so she could bring me home and I could watch Luke and Laura's wedding.
That is a great mom. Let me ask you this. Were there shows that you might not have known about it that you researched because I see you included The Doctors, Texas, Sunset Beach, Loving. These are not Generations. These are not shows that, necessarily had super long runs or were in the top 5. So were there shows that you were not familiar with that you became familiar with in doing this book?
I knew most of the shows. When I think of the shows that aren't in there, they just didn't come up, like Love is a Many Splendored Thing or Secret Storm. Those were shows I was aware of. They just didn't really come up in the moments, but there were scenes I didn't know. So people might have asked for a particular scene from a show that I was familiar with, but I had to go looking for the scene. And I also had to think about who I was going to reach out to talk about it.
We certainly know how soaps have changed over the last 20 years. When you were doing the book and putting it together, what had you noticed that had changed about soaps from that time to the past?
Scenes used to run longer. Scenes used to go deeper. For instance, I have an interview with Catherine Lee Scott talking about Dark Shadows. And here's the thing, Dark Shadows was a show I had never seen. I'd only read about it. I knew about what a phenomenon it was, but it all aired before actually I lived in the United States. So I had never seen it. And then a couple of years ago, Pluto TV has a whole Dark Shadows channel. So I was saying, I said to my husband, I feel like an anthropologist who's only studied a tribe that they thought was extinct. And then suddenly they're right in the middle of it. So I could watch those episodes. And there are scenes where if you asked me to summarize it, nothing happens. 2 people talk to each other, but they are mesmerizing. Something about the way that they're shot and the intensity of the dialogue, that is something that I think with the quick cutting and everyone being just so darn pithy these days, that we're really missing. We're missing these scenes that can breathe, that have the time to breathe. And it really is just 2 people talking to each other. So finding old clips that really showed the difference. I think one of my oldest, I'm not sure, but I think the oldest I have is the Rachel, Steve, and Alice triangle. We're back to another world, which actually the commentary on that was done by Connie Pasalacqua, who was Marlena Delacroix and had written all those columns. She talked about those, and those clips, they breathe. People take their time. You feel the moment. Nothing is rushed. Every beat is played.
I think that's something that's missing a lot from soaps, and I don't understand why, because I think if you build it, they'll come.
We're trying.
What were your diehards for this book? What did you insist on? This has to be in this book.
I didn't really insist. I turned it over to the fans. I really wanted to hear what people were going to say. I mean, there were some obvious ones. Luke and Laura's wedding, as I said. It's going to be hard to miss that one when you ask just people to name soap moments. So for that one, I actually spoke to Tom Racina, who had written the Ice Princess storyline and who wrote the wedding. And he talked about how the only reason they got them married was because Elizabeth Taylor wanted them to be married. They had actually been planning to stretch it out, but apparently Elizabeth Taylor called the General Hospital office one day and said they had to get married. And Tom Racina said, well, sure, if you'll come. And she said, yeah. So that's how Luke and Laura got married. Those are the big ones. Some of the other ones, Marty's rape on One Life to Live, that was obviously a major story. And it was relatively recent at the time. So I think it was fresh in people's minds. But you also had things like the final episode of Capsule, which people, I think 40 years later, are still upset. Does she get killed by the firing squad? What's going on? And what parties did those two families belong to? There's still questions that are lingering.
Well, see, they never really made it specific because just like today, don't ask, and then you can have Thanksgiving dinner together.
Right. Well, I also figured it had to do with the fact that there was only two ways to go, one with the obvious cliches or two with the not obvious cliches. And since they couldn't decide which way they were going to go, better not to have anyone have any standards about anything.
Well, I did see James Lipton at the head writer of Capsule for the finale at the Daytime Emmys when he got the Lifetime Achievement Award, I believe in 2007. And I saw him backstage and I asked him, did Sloane live or die from the firing squad? And I've got to find the audio cassette on this because he looked at me and he groused, I'm never telling. I thought, good, you hang on to that. You hang on to that. And congratulations on your Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well, there was those kind of questions, but there were also things like Robin and Stone's love story with him getting the HIV diagnosis. There was Luke coming out on As the World Turns, Bianca coming out on All My Children. There was really Felicia's intervention. Again, we're back to another world. So some of them were really big moments, but some of them not necessarily. Some of them people just remember smaller beats, or even in a big story they remember a smaller beat. Like in the Luke's coming out story, the scene that the author Sam Ford, who had actually written a book on soaps, talked about is he said it was actually the scene of Emma finding out and being angry that she was the last one to be told, because did everyone assume that she would just be judgmental? So it was a very small sliver of a much larger story, but that's what spoke to people. So it isn't always the big moments. It might be a big overall story, but it might be a smaller beat within the story.
No, I think the smaller beats within bigger stories are what this genre is all about. It's why people watch every day. People talk about saying that the model for watching every single day can't exist anymore. And I thought, well, not if you do it right. If you do it right, you're going to want to watch every day.
Well, Michael Malone talked about how when he first took on the job of head writing for One Life to Live, because that was his first job as a soap writer, he'd been a novelist before then, and he spoke to Agnes Nixon, and Agnes Nixon told him to think of it as a jewel that you're holding up to the light, and you're just turning it a little bit, and every time you see a different facet of it.
If one more actor says to me that my character is a prism and through each facet I express a different emotion.
Well, that was Agnes. That's
No,
That's all I
no,
can say.
no.
But that was Michael telling me about Agnes. I'm 3 people removed from that.
It's certainly very true. I've just heard it quite a few times over the years, but
Well, was it Bill Bell who said something about dropping a pebble into a pond and the ripples? Was that Bell? Because I remember that metaphor too.
that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar. Yeah, I know I've heard that. Um, were there any shows that you became more of a fan of in doing research for the book? And when someone gave you a clip that you looked it up, do you think, oh, I want to see more of this?
I wish I had seen Generations because I actually had not. The whole thing went by in the blink of an eye. I mean, what was it on? 2, 3 years?
Less than 3 years, yeah.
Less than 3 years, and it was on at a time when I think we still had 20 shows on the air, so it wasn't convenient. I don't remember when it aired, but whatever it was, it didn't work.
It was opposite the second half of Y&R in a lot of markets. And that was in certainly Y&R was number one. Jack, Victor, Nikki, Diane, Ashley, not Diane, but at the time, but Victor, Diane, I keep saying Diane, I must have Susan Walters on the brain. Victor, Nikki, Ashley, Jack, all in the forefront. Catherine Chancellor, you weren't going to turn away from that.
Well, and also I think we're coming out of the 80s where everything was big, where there was all these major corporations, and we're worried about an ice cream story. It felt smaller. Generations felt smaller than all the other shows on the air. But now, also, I'm an adult. I think I was 12 or 13 when it was on. That's a show that I wish I had gotten a chance to see more of, because they were clearly trying to do something. Even if they necessarily weren't successful at it, they were trying to do something different. And that I wish I had had a chance to see.
I think it was ahead of its time, and I think in many ways, and I think that, it certainly brought us Kelly Rutherford, Christoph St. John, and some other terrific people that went on to have great careers. That's a show they could probably try to revive. When I was reading the book, I clicked on a few links, and it's frustrating because a few of the links, not all, but a few have been like deactivated.
Absolutely.
And that's just going to happen. Why do you think we don't have a better library, an official library of greatest moments, all the episodes? I mean, I think if they tried to monetize it, they would be surprised how much they would be able to do that.
Well, we know the first and easiest one is, ABC just taped over their stuff. So most of the early stuff from All My Children, One Life to Live is just not physically available. It's not that anybody's hiding it somewhere. It's just they taped it, which is why you keep seeing that clip over and over again of Susan Lucci. Well, Pine Valley isn't the corner of Hollywood and Vine, because I think that's all they have from that era. So that's a simple, practical thing. Afterwards, they started storing their tapes in Fort Lee. If anybody wants to raid a warehouse in Fort Lee, that's the place to go.
Hang on, Fort
Lee, New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Right over the bridge.
Okay, if anything happens, let's take this off YouTube.
Exactly, but we're putting together an army. With P&G, like I said, they tried. The fact is, P&G, they were digitizing As the World Turns, and at the same time as they were digitizing As the World Turns, Another World, they were digitizing As the World Turns. So a couple of those years exist, like the last 2 or 3 years before cancellation, they were sort of digitizing them as they went and putting them up.
Okay. But
then they pulled them down. But then they pulled them down because they were just
to those particular years. I would think that one would go to the Douglas Marland years.
I'm reporting. I'm reporting what was available.
Right.
And after As the World Turns and Guiding Light were canceled, P&G made the conscious decision to get out of the soap business. That was just a corporate decision made many levels higher up than where my desk was. But It's the kind of thing where they thought they could make money. Look, if they were making money, they would keep doing it. That's the wonderful thing about capitalism. So they were just not making enough money with the effort that it took to get the tapes, the physical tapes, digitized, uploaded, all the metadata, all of that. They just decided it was not worth their while.
If you were going to do another volume of the book and choosing from your own choices. I'm sure it would be just as easy now to get feedback from fans on several social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, about what people would like to see. Are there any stories over the last 20 years, 23 years, that you personally would like to see captured in a similar tone?
Oh, that's now you're putting me on the spot. I'm actually gonna fire it right back, and I'm gonna do like a round of pass, and I'd like everyone else who's on right now to answer theirs while I stall for time to think, because that is not
I'll
yours.
tell you what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the first year of what Frank Valentini and Ron Carlivati did at General Hospital, because I think they infused it by bringing back familiar faces. They de-emphasized the mob a little bit. They didn't de-emphasize it. They kind of wove it in a different way. A lot of the emphasis seemed to go back onto the hospital. And I think that there's something about this genre. When John Ingle had his last appearance as Edward Quartermain, and he refused to take the one vial of antidote from the Contagion and insisted that Emmett take it. First of all, he goes out a hero. Tracy says, I tried to trick him into taking it, but as usual, he was one step ahead of me. That's a clear reference to the time he faked his heart attack. She wouldn't give him the pills. She thinks he's dead. She's calling the morgue, and he puts his hands on her and says, gotcha. And I think when you can have a medium that will reference a story point at that point from 23 years earlier, or 33, 80, 90.
Yeah, it was like 80. Yeah.
33, or 33 years later. My goodness.
Well, now, in perfect complement to that, I have the one I'd like to do. The revisiting of Luke and Laura's rape after Elizabeth is raped and Lucky finds out about it. The scenes with Lucky and Laura, and scenes with Lucky and Luke, and then Luke and Laura. And it exactly for the same reasons. I don't know if you remember the particular episode. I still do. In that they replay this scene at the disco with Rise playing in the background and Luke pushing Laura to the floor, and the camera sweeps up to the lights like it does in the original, and then it sweeps back and Lucky is standing there and watching.
Sure, beautiful direction. But what did you think about them revisiting that storyline that was complicated, to say the least? Because they did change it from a rape and then I saw the episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I was 10. I didn't see them, so I only saw the aftermath. So for me, it was also interesting to see the original scenes as well. Now everybody knows how old I am, as I keep referencing how old I was at various scenes.
I was in the womb. No, I was in high school, and I watched it and I thought, okay, like I see what she's playing here. And then this is very difficult to get into, but when you're watching every day and you're saying, well, if she turns him in, he'll be killed by the mob, by Scotty, he'll go to jail forever. They had a friendship. I have to see how this plays out. The next thing you know, they're on the run, and she's telling everybody when she comes back, of course I'm Mrs. Scott Baldwin still. Mm-hmm. And it was just a roller coaster, and it would be told totally differently today. And I applaud Jeannie for standing up about how she feels about it and what she was asked to play. But I don't know that when they revisit it, that they're going to really fully recapture what was going on at the time.
But one can make the argument, not to go too far off on a tangent, but one can make the argument that in real life, when you revisit something, you're actually looking at it now through 20 years or whatever it was of hindsight. No one can ever go back to the moment that it was then, the time, the place, the emotions. You can think you remember the emotions, but as we know, the brain overwrites and overwrites and overwrites, and what you think you're remembering is just remembering something that you're remembering. So not to put too fine a point on it, but in life, when you go back, I don't know if you've ever, I think all of us have had some grudge that we've carried about a person, and when it comes up, that's not how it happened. That's not how I saw it. So in a way, it's life, it's real. Time is going to pass, memories are going to fade, attitudes are going to change.
2 questions. Why aren't you head writing a soap now?
You know, do you know someone? Could you know someone you could speak to about that? That could be
Well, I do know someone, but I'm not sure I
I
can.
think we all know someone, but here we all are.
And secondly, over your left shoulder, is that Big Bird?
No, that is a duck that my daughter got me. So it's a duck.
Okay, because from a distance, it looks a little bit like Big Bird.
But the teddy bear over there is actually a teddy bear that has his own soap opera saga, if you're interested in hearing it. If not, we
I'm
can.
very interested in hearing the saga of soap opera Teddy Bear.
Okay, so here is this teddy bear. We actually, right before we started recording, we were talking about the fact that Ala Korat, who played Jenna of Dean and Jenna on Another World, she and I, we were both born in Odessa. She's a year younger than me. Now you all know how old she is. Although as I keep watching interviews with her, she keeps getting much younger than me. It's kind of interesting. She was just a grade behind me at school, so and I even know when her birthday is. But so we both came out of Odessa, and we went through the same immigration process, which is through Vienna and then through Rome. And then in my case, when we were coming to America, we were coming to San Francisco, because basically we had a choice. My parents had a choice. They could either go to San Francisco or they could go to New Jersey. Not Fort Lee, though. And they had no idea. So my father went to the American volunteer who was working with the Soviet Jewish refugees in Rome. And he said, look, I have these two options. I can go to San Francisco or I could go to New Jersey. Which one should I choose? And the volunteer said, you have a chance to go to San Francisco, and you're even considering New Jersey. So that's why we ended up in San Francisco. But before we got to San Francisco, we had to spend the night in New York before we flew out. I learned fascinating things. Did you know the TV came in color? I had never seen that before. That was so great. In retrospect, I think I saw Lucy. So the Lucy show. So my God, there was a lot of color, but it was really, really staggering. And so that teddy bear had actually come with me. You know how kids get attached to an object and it's a comfort item, especially when you're being moved around several continents and you don't quite know what's going on because your parents never quite told you that you were leaving home and never coming back. There's a lot of
minus the continents, yes.
Yes. So, and we get to the airport in New York, and the teddy bear is nowhere to be found. Now, at that point, we're not even legally in the United States yet because our ultimate destination is San Francisco. So we're just at the airport, and we have stickers on us that say HIAS, Hebrew International Aid Society. So we're basically freight. And we have to stay at the airport because we're not legally in the United States. But the teddy bear is missing. And here's the thing about my father. If he were a soap opera character, he's the one who is always logical, reasonable, rational. He makes decisions based on thinking, not on feeling. But the teddy bear is missing. So my father sneaks away out of the airport, gets into a cab. And for the record, we have exactly $300 on us because we're only allowed to take out $100 per person. That's all you can bring out. So he gets into a cab, takes the cab back to the hotel, says to the hotel manager, I need to search the room. I'm looking for a teddy bear. The hotel manager says, the maid has already cleaned the room. She didn't find a teddy bear. My father says, let me speak to the maid. He's very, very persuasive. Imagine Victor Newman now around this point, complete with the accent. Let me speak to the maid.
Find this teddy bear.
I need to find the maid, the teddy bear. The maid comes out, says, I cleaned the room. I didn't find a teddy bear. My father says, take me to where you dump the sheets. I don't know if you've ever seen what an industrial operation a hotel is, because, you know, it's 24/7, massive washers and all that. They go down in chutes. So they take him down there. He climbs into the area where they have the sheet, digs around, finds the teddy bear, gets back into a cab, and comes back to the airport in time for us to make it to San Francisco. Now, usually when I tell the story, the teddy bear isn't behind me, so you kind of had a spoiler as to what was going to happen. But yes, that is the teddy bear's soap opera saga, and he's still here with us today.
Why is Teddy not in a acrylic clear case in a place of honor?
Oh, you know, he likes being down here with the rest of us. He's a common bear.
Looks like he's in great shape.
He's not, unfortunately. Here, I'll show you. He's just had a lot of work done. Like, speaking back to
one piece.
Like, look, his leg no longer moves, his arm no longer moves, his head has been kind of stitched. And this is not really an eye. This is paper that I made out of white and black. So he's not as healthy as he looks, but he's had a lot of work done and he's still here with us.
Maybe there was too much starch in the.
Well, I don't think he actually made it. Had he made it to the laundry, I actually think he would have fallen apart. So he found him tangled in the sheets. No, if he'd made it to the laundry, he'd have been a goner. Those are industrial washers.
Well, that is a great story about you and your dad and his love. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, as we all know, every once in a while, we all have feelings about our dads that are less than positive, and I have to take deep breaths and stare at the bear because it really helps.
That's amazing. That's great.
So that was a little César from the soap, but it had soap opera elements in it.
César Faison?
Now César Faison, would he have ever gone back to get a teddy bear? Let's talk for Brit. Let's talk about this. Do you think anyone ever went back to get Brit's teddy bear? Do you think a lot of the issues we saw, including her trying to barbecue Emma's doll, came from the fact that perhaps no one ever ran back and got her teddy bear?
That was an accident and one of the best things I'd ever seen. Like, it was something out of a Brady Bunch episode, but they dramatized it. And that was you were supposed to hate the Britch, but nobody ever really fully hated her.
And talk about flashbacks. So I hated Robin from the moment that child's face appeared on my screen. Hated her with a red hot passion. But I do very clearly remember the scene at the end of the Asian Quarter where she goes running to Anna and Anna picks her up. And then 30 years later, when Robin comes back from the dead and Emma standing right there where Patrick is about to marry, what's her name?
Sabrina.
The perfect saint. Sabrina, the perfect saint.
Lovely woman. Lovely actress.
Hey, there's a lot of actors that I love that their characters I could not stand. Adore Martha Burns. She's a lovely human being. Could not stand Lily also. But side note, and you have Emma running to Robin the same way that Robin ran to Anna. And not in a flashback where you have everybody in 300 pounds of makeup trying to look younger, but the real, actual, genuine scene. Although, of course, then you had to look at the fact, oh, look, they went outside and they shot that actually. And look how pretty that is. And oh, she's running down a cardboard set. But it's okay. I can extrapolate the rest.
You didn't like Robin?
I did not. She was just a little too precious. I wanted to squeeze her and make her eyes pop.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Robin. Can you open your mouth and eyes any wider? I like Kimberly. I'm so happy whenever I see her name on the directing credit. I'm so happy for what she's achieved. Kimberly's terrific. Robin.
She's a wonderful director, very nice girl. I think she was like, I don't know, 12 or something, and asked me to dance at an Emmy party. I just was like,
no,
okay.
Kimberly's terrific. Kimberly's terrific. Robin, she is. I don't miss her.
Yeah.
I know. I have a tendency to tell stories that make the person who's then talking to me go, did I have a point? Did you have a point?
No. I had an actor say to me once that he didn't like the critique that I had written about him. I said, I'm sorry, I just didn't feel anything. He said, well, I'm going to hit you. And I said, well, then I might feel something. And he said, I'd like to see you get up there and act. And I said, I'd like to see you get up there and act. So, we have our moments. Would anyone else like to chime in on a moment from the last 20 years that they would like to see in an updated version of Alina's book, Should One Be Done? Sandra, I see you have your hands raised, both as emojis, or maybe you're clapping, and I see your hand go up. What moment would you like to see, Sandra? I think you're muted.
Okay. All right. Okay. What I wanted to ask is, like, Elena, what do you think, what needs to get the viewers back into watching? How can I say it? Kind of nervous here. Like you said, the 80s were big. Everybody wanted to know what's going to happen. Friday cliffhanger, what's going to happen on Monday? Well, now today, fast forward to today, nobody, I mean, we don't see that no more. But what do you think you as a writer would think, well, maybe what kind of stories will win back the younger, to attract younger viewers? What kind of stories do you think?
Yeah. I'm a really bad person to ask about what would attract younger viewers because just to give an example, so Martha Byrne and I are exactly the same age. I think she's like a month younger than I am. So when Lily was brought on As the World Turns, it was supposed to specifically appeal to kids her age. I think we were both like 14 or something like that. But I wasn't into Lily and I wasn't into Dusty. I was into Tom and Margot back when Justin Dees and Margaret Collin were playing them. I was into John Dixon and Larry Brigman. My favorite wife of his is like Karen, who nobody remembers, but that's what
Aaron Haynes.
Karen
yeah,
is awesome.
so yeah, exactly. So that's always been my favorite pairing. That was also during the time when they had those the remotes in Spain with James and Barbara and Gunnar and Betsy and Steve. So here's the thing: I was a kid, but I was interested in the adult stories. The teen stories never interested me, even when I was a teen. So to me, it's always just like, tell a good story. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that appeals to the young people, because the young people tend to respond to a good story regardless of the age of the characters.
Doug Marlin said what young people like to see is young people getting to do older things. With the characters of Kelly and Morgan on Guiding Light, I think he asked his niece, and she said, in high school, like, what would you think is really cool? And she said, oh, if I could date a college guy. And Kelly was a med student, so even when a little older.
We'll talk about attitudes changing now. A 17-year-old girl is dating a med student. No.
Yeah, no.
Well, but I was that As the World Turns and Guiding
What do you
Light.
mean? Who's she dating?
Well, I mean, a 17-year-old girl dating a medical student is probably at least 23, if not more than that. People would look at that side-eyed a lot more than they did in 1979. But I was at P&G when the two big young stories that broke out at As the World Turns and Guiding Light. As the World Turns, it was Jennifer Landon's Gwen with Will, which was a much older story with her losing the baby and, the baby switch and all of that. And over at Guiding Light, it was Jonathan and Tammy, which they were still young, but Jonathan was playing a pretty intense and dark character. It wasn't like, here we are in high school and who's going to go to the prom. So those two couples were very popular. They were young people, but as you and Doug Marlin said, they were doing much older things than
that's what I think. It's younger people watching, seeing people either their age or a little bit older doing even older things.
So at what age is dating your cousin okay? I mean, really?
Well, no, my
they were
issue with
cousins.
Lily is that Lily ate the show. There was a time period when Lily was at the center of everything. I think it was Soap Opera Digest that wrote the biggest holiday in Oakdale. It's not Christmas, it's not Easter, it's not New Year's, it's Lily's birthday. We spent a month talking about Lily's birthday, then we spent a month celebrating Lily's birthday, then we spent a month discussing what happened at Lily's birthday. So, and as someone who was 15 myself, I had a strong inkling that the world did not work that way.
It was in August. And what was funny is that Margot, this is something else that I think the same writer wrote in that magazine, was that Margot was in Greece. And she called home and spoke to Lila, her mother, and said, Mama, I'm in Greece. I'm all alone. I'm pregnant with another man's child who's not my husband. But tell me, how's Lily doing? Is she feeling loved? Is she okay?
Are enough men in love with her at this time?
Same time. I think at one point Doug had gotten the message and was like starting to like downplay certain things, but
Well, it's interesting because if you look at Doug Marlin's original Bible for Lily, he saw Lily as much more of a spoiled brat than, especially when Martha Byrne started playing her, especially the scenes with the riding crop and Holden. He saw it much more as Lady Chatterley's lover and saw her much more as a spoiled sort of lady of the manor. And the storyline kind of got away from him in that sense. I don't know if it was because of what Martha could play or because of the insane chemistry between Martha and John Hensley, but his original version was closer to what I saw, because I saw a spoiled brat, but like nobody else noticed that except for me. That was very disturbing.
Well, I think at some point the writers start to see what the actors are
Yeah,
doing.
no, and Martha didn't
Television.
have that. Martha had much more of a vulnerability and an earthiness to her.
I don't
Well,
think
speaking
Lucy
of-
Deakins was like that at all.
No, she wasn't. And that's the other thing. I really liked Lucy Deakins. I
Me
really
too.
liked her take.
But
So
then-
Martha was a very different Lily.
Very different.
Well, speaking of Susan Walters, when another Doug Marland actress, when she was Lorna, I mean, Lorna was
Loving, yeah.
incredibly spoiled, very wealthy, and she was the best teenage I'd ever seen in a long time.
Right.
She-
And then they recast her with another actress, and suddenly Lorna is being played by this her 14-year-old stepdaughter. I mean, that talk about a Lorna that took a completely different turn. But she was recast. Susan was no longer playing her.
yeah,
and she
no,
was dating this
Hannah
older guy.
Parker or Parker O'Hannah. I'm not
Yeah,
quite
that's
sure,
it. She had
but-
like 2 last names or something.
yeah.
Um,
But I don't remember her being on very long.
She
and-
was dating this older guy who had a teenage daughter. And actually, that girl was great. She was basically Lorna at 14, but she was playing Lorna.
Loving lost me after Doug left and other writers took over. I just was not connected to the show.
Well, Loving also, I mean, didn't they also have this serious problem is that they launched with the story of Lily,
Lily's
who's
yes,
being
yeah.
raped by her father. And then ABC told them they had to can the story because they were going to
Because of
run
something
something
about
about
Amelia.
Amelia. And they didn't want it stealing their thunder. So talk about a major story that should have, I think Doug said should have run for 2 years. They pulled the rug out from under it after 6 months. She's fine now. She's playing piano in another room.
Brian
What was
Cranston
this
told me once that the turnover rate at Loving was so
Oh,
bad.
sorry,
that they-
Amber, were you saying what is the show?
Like, no, like I've heard of Loving, obviously. I work in soap operas, but I've never seen it. And what?
Well, yes, it was originally launched with this major story that had never been done about this very shy, repressed girl. And the reason is because her father, a college professor, has been raping her since she was a teenager. And her mother is an agoraphobic who can't stand up to her father. And it was going to be really powerful stuff. But then ABC was going to air the TV movie Something About Amelia with Ted Danson and Glenn
Ted
Close,
Danson and Glenn Close.
which they said was going to, and all their promos said first time on television, we're
Oops.
tackling this subject. And someone at ABC Daytime went, and they went, oh, pull it so that we can promote it.
I have a real funny story about maybe 10, 12, 15 years ago, maybe. I called up ABC and I said, I'd like to interview Agnes Nixon and do a Loving retrospect. And they said, okay, we'll see if we can get her. Can you send over an email? And I said, sure, I'll send it over in an email. And they wrote me back and they said, well, can we tell her what this is about? And I said, yes, it's a Loving retrospect. And they wrote back and said, Michael, we adore you. We know you're going to do a great job, but we need to know what this is about. We know you love her, but what is it about? And I said, there was a soap opera called Loving
On your network
before
in the
Port
morning.
Charles, before A Daytime to Remember, before The City. And I'd like to interview Agnes about it. And they went, oh, listen,
she go
they were
creative.
super nice about it.
Remember,
They put me on-
Loving was going to turn into, before it was The City, they were going to call it Love NYC. Do you remember
With the
that?
heart in the middle.
With the heart in the middle. So for a while there, we were all calling it that Soviet soap Lovnik because it was LONYC.
Makes
And I actually, at that time I was working at ABC and I wrote the wraparounds. Remember when Lauren Marie Taylor would introduce classic episodes as they were going to transition from one to the other? So I actually wrote those wraparounds that Lauren Marie Taylor did. You
Lauren
don't remember?
Marie
It's
Taylor
not that memorable.
Or
It's a
Reba McEntire.
no, Reba McEntire did Daytime to Remember. Reba McEntire did the intros to classic All My Children, General Hospital.
There was a
One-
rascal named Tad Martin back at Pond Valley.
That's the one. Those I didn't do. I did the ones where Lauren Marie Taylor was summarizing everything. The idea was if new people were starting to watch, then she would summarize. And that was when they were also doing the Loving Killer. Remember the serial killer? And so I did have the footage that was going to air of who the killer was, you know, when Gwyneth turns around with the hair and the wig. And so my funny story about that is basically ABC and I went back and forth on how many frames we could show before you could tell who it was or who it wasn't. So, I mean, they were literally cutting 3. I was putting 1 frame in. So we went back and forth so that reveal wouldn't be completely spoiled, but as much as we could possibly do of it.
That was good.
Soap's greatest mystery. Why did another show not immediately scoop up Christine Tudor?
Where is she?
She was old. She was old and hideous like Leanne Hunley is now.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
I'm sure she's
yes.
43.
No, I adore Leanne Hunley. I think she's fabulous. I think she's gorgeous. I think she can play drama. I think she can play comedy. But the way the show is using her, they clearly think she is hideous and should not be on our screens.
Yeah.
No, I think Leanne is amazing. I've loved her since the first day she showed up. Now I want more Anna. In fact, I would like to cut all the scenes of Nicole talking and we can just show Anna reacting.
When
But
you
that was
beat-
not
when you beat
against
out
them.
Uta Hagen for a daytime
Yeah.
Emmy, I think you
Yes.
got shocked. She
Yeah.
is a stunningly beautiful woman who can do comedy. You usually don't get that combination.
Yeah, no,
And
she's
she said to
amazing, and Days
Pacey-
doesn't realize it. That
and
was
she
a
said to
slam on
Pacey-
Days, not Leanne.
On
No, I know. I know.
Pacey on Dawson's Creek, who said, "I make love good, teacher," and she says, "No, Pacey, you make love well."
Love.
I don't know if that's an
that.
actual line. It was in a Family Guy speech.
They were awesome together too. So
Before
I
we
would
get
love
carried
to-
away again, Nancy, if you have any questions,
Yeah.
go ahead
Jump
and
in.
because we'll give you some time here.
Did you
No,
lose your name?
actually, I'm
There we
enjoying
go.
listening to all of
Nancy's
you, and I
Aquarius.
did
Yeah,
watch
thank
Loving for a time. I did
you.
watch Guiding Light and As the World Turns. I was in school during the day, so to catch these soaps, it was mostly during the summer because they were
You
on
went to
earlier.
school? I skipped as much as I could to go watch my soaps. So
Had a program of VCR. I had one of the earlier ones. Basically, the soap opera backstory to how we got a VCR is my mother tried to kill me. And she felt bad about it. The longer version is basically, we lived in San Francisco, right? San Francisco gets sun exactly 3 days out of the year. And on the day when I was out in the sun, my mother thought she was putting suntan lotion on me, but she was putting on tanning lotion. And this is the color I naturally am. And the color I turned was not a healthy one. And my mother felt really bad about it, so she got me a VCR, and that's why I had a VCR early. And this was before you could stop and start, so I would record the whole ABC lineup starting at Ryan's Hope. I mean, this was in San Francisco, might have been different here, but it was Ryan's Hope, then Loving, then All My Children, then One Life to Live, then General Hospital, then The Edge of Night. So I just taped that whole lineup for
you were
many
able to.
years.
Oh, good job.
So,
I'll tell you,
I didn't have a lot of other interests.
moments of my childhood it was summertime and Cricket and Danny were getting married, and I'm in Canada. I have 2 chances, right, to see this, and I missed it both days, and I never got to see that wedding. And in my head, it was like this big grand thing, right? Like, oh my God, this is gonna be the most beautiful wedding of all time. When I actually saw it as an adult, I was like, that was it. That I've been waiting 15 years to see this clip, and just a little stupid beach wedding,
Oh,
right? But man, I felt guilty about missing that wedding for like 3 whole weeks. Pretty sure.
Did they
that
ever do
wedding
any
was
clips, any
also-
flashbacks to it when Danny came back this last time? I know they did some flashbacks. Did they do anything to the wedding? I don't think they did, right?
No, they didn't. No, no. That somebody uploaded their VHS or whatever to like YouTube. So I saw the really grainy I saw the wedding and I was like, that was it. I thought it would be like this big like princess wedding. It was just them being like, yeah, I do too. I was like, oh my God, that's it. Yeah.
Alina, going back to your book, was there a moment that, people didn't bring up a lot that surprised you? Because I have to say, I kept looking for Marlena's possession, and Marlena's possession was not in there.
You're right. What we got was Marlena coming back from the dead on spending like a week on the docks, sort of wandering back and forth. I think we got no, you're right. I almost feel like that was too modern. I mean, going back through it, don't you feel it was more like early 90s and below? I can't think of anything that was really past that. I mean, Marty's rape was like 93. And I'm trying to think, and Robin and Stone was like 94-ish, 94,
95.
95. Yeah, 94, 95-ish. And that's about it. And I mean, the possession was around then. I did have one person from Passions who did talk about the moment when Timmy comes to life, when it's a doll and Tabitha's talking to him and then he comes to life. But that was really well, and Dark Shadows, obviously, but Dark Shadows and Passions were what they were. The devil possession was kind of not typical days, and then suddenly it was.
Any
Um,
Roger and Holly stuff? Did you
Nancy, feel free to just jump in here and talk whenever.
You know
Yeah,
what,
we
and I-
didn't get Reva clone either. We got, of course, Reva in the fountain, but that was kind of expected. Reva in the fountain. I think a lot of people were trying to forget that.
I
do
apologize, guys. I have to go. I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead, Michael.
But I will. I've enjoyed this immensely, Alina. It's a terrific book. I want you to autograph my Kindle.
I
And
can actually I can send you a book plate. That's what I've been doing for people. I've been sending signed book plates, and they could stick it.
and Nancy, please come back the next time we do our book club. It's been great having you, and thank you for being our inaugural member.
And like, feel free to bring a friend or 3 or 5 or your family.
Or 20.
You know, just sign up your whole family.
Your whole family and your neighbors and people you
In the
don't
words
know.
of May Bryan, have a good
Have
night.
a great life.
We can.
Speaking of signed books, I'm guessing Nancy is the one who's going to be the winner of a signed book from Alina. Did you?
All right,
wanna
so all
talk
I
about
need is
that
a
before?
mailing address. If you could, Nancy, if you could send that, who should she send it to?
Oh my God, we never did get the book. Ashley, do we have an email address she can send it to easily?
Probably
Ashley's on.
should it be news?
Actually, you know what? If you
News at soaphub.com, right?
News at soaphub.com.
Yes.
Actually, you're muted if you're trying to speak. I guess I have to ask you to unmute.
Oh, it's not letting people unmute.
Yeah, Nancy's saying it's not letting her unmute. Maybe you have to invite her to unmute.
Why don't we just remove all the unmute?
Yeah, just remove the mutes.
How do?
Yes. So if you send me your mailing address, Nancy, I will send you a print copy.
Okay, I am unmuted. Yeah, sorry. I couldn't get
Great,
unmuted.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, just send me your mailing address.
Give her your email though, Lena.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about your new book a little bit, Alina?
Well, my new book, it's a historical fiction. It takes place in the Soviet Union during the 1930s and 40s. As you may have heard, that's where I'm originally from. So it's called My Mother's Secret, a novel of the Jewish Autonomous Region. And I will send you an autographed copy, Nancy.
Thank you very much for that.
And Amber.
All right, so thank you. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to add as far as Soap's greatest moments or just anything?
I'm curious as to like what everyone's favorite new greatest moment is.
What define new? You have to give us
Like
parameters.
let's go with like the last like 5 years. If you were gonna put a new moment in a book,
Garen looks thrilled.
last 5 years. Yeah, poor Garen.
I think
Good luck, right?
Michael, I can speak for Michael, I believe, and say it would be Douglas saying,
Douglas is
baby
baby
Beth
Beth."
is alive.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me, and it was very recent, is Sean shooting Bo on Days of Our Lives, because I did not expect that. I could see where it was going, and I assumed it was going to be Steve, whom I still call Patch because I'm very old. I assumed it was going to be Steve, but having Sean was so much better and so perfect. So definitely that was all right. Yes, that, hey, remember how soaps used to be? That 3 minutes, that was it almost every week.
Mine would be Thomas and the Hope doll. The greatest storyline
here, Amber,
that
not
ever be on soaps.
I don't think
Now,
I could predict Garen, but
I
I can
wanna
predict
say-
you and Michael, Amber, so.
I want to say I was not a Days watcher, so probably like 3, maybe 4 years ago when they were talking about the what is it called, the time back, the time forward, the move forward, the
Right.
Oh, the time jump.
Oh, the
yeah.
year,
The
the
time
year they
jump.
looked forward. That was good. That was really good.
now I'm a Days watcher.
Oh, Sarah losing Mickey. Oh.
Oh, that was
Oh.
awful.
Yeah.
No, worse than that was when Hope and Brooke walked into Steffi's house and took back baby back.
Oh, that was heartbreaking. That was very
Yeah,
hard.
that was one of the most heartbreaking moments I've ever seen, is Steffi having to hand over the baby
Oh.
with zero proof it was Beth. Zero
Douglas
evidence
said.
that this is actually the baby. She had to hand the baby back. Oh my God. Oh, I'm gonna cry. Oh, that was awful.
How about the worst moments?
Oh.
Okay, well, the
I
worst
want to
moment
celebrate that.
is
I mean,
Emma's death on BMB. Why? That was useless. And how many times Flo said, well, we should definitely tell Hope that the baby's alive. No, okay, I won't.
Nancy, we want to thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed it, and you'll be back for the next book club.
Are you cutting us off, Karen?
Oh no, Nancy just sent a message that she
No,
had
Nancy
to
said she had to
leave.
go. No,
She's leaving. Okay, bye,
back up.
Nancy.
Good
I
job
back up.
watching that
It's
chat,
coming.
Karen. The rest of us, it went over our heads. We didn't even see. So,
Yes,
bye-bye.
bye,
Nancy.
Nancy.
Thank you so much.
bye.